Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Banter. I've got Tony here with me. Tony, we've got a lot of news to get through, so let's hop right in here. Alrighty, first and foremost, the Blackrock IBIT Bitcoin ETF overtakes gold. So this is 10 months in versus the gold ETFs, 20 years of existence. And the Bitcoin ETF just surpassed it with over $33 billion in assets versus 32 billion. Tony, is this a sign of something big happening?
Well, I guess the Bitcoiners weren't so crazy after all, right? These gold bugs must be trembling right now, wondering, how is this possible? We've been around for 5,000 years, and now this new thing comes along and in 10 months just blows us right out of the water. Well, what did you expect, man? I mean, the truth about Bitcoin versus gold was something, the Bitcoin community has been hammering on for many years. But because it doesn't have, the test of time that gold has, there's a lot of folks that, just stick by what they know, which is gold. Bitcoin is gold on steroids. It has all the features that gold doesn't have. For one, we know the exact amount of it. That we know that it cannot be manipulated. We know it cannot be dug out of the ground, and we know that it can absolutely, serve 8 billion people instantly without the permission of anyone, not being issued by any government, not controlled by any government, but not regulated by any state, none of that stuff. Peer-to-peer money, like a ninth wonder of the world. Something that, gold can only dream of becoming, but, it's new. This is only, it's 15 years old, and, the world has never seen anything like it. But once you understand Bitcoin and you understand that this is like a mathematical certainty, it's not hard to shift your beliefs, at least if you're open-minded and are always looking forward into the future. You can be stubborn, like some people, I don't want to name them, but those that keep, harping on why gold is the better investment, even though it keeps losing, on a regular basis. But once you understand Bitcoin, you understand that, while gold may, not go to zero, so to speak, it will never amount to anywhere remotely close to Bitcoin's value and value to the world, what it can actually provide humanity. So I'm not surprised that the Bitcoin ETFs have eclipsed gold in such a small period of time, 10 months. The only thing I don't like about this is that it's still an ETF, right? It's not real Bitcoin, but I guess it's a step in, like it's a foot in the door, so to speak, for people to become familiar with Bitcoin just in general, and hopefully, a large percentage of them educate themselves on the asset and, opt out of the ETF, which is essentially fiat, and find their way into proper Bitcoin self-custody. But this is definitely, optimistic news. Attention to Bitcoin is growing at an exponential rate now, whether it's ETFs or otherwise. It's just, the Bitcoin buzzword is, being echoed in many chambers now, and which is a very, very good thing.
Yeah, that was very gracious of you too to not mention Peter Schiff's name. I think that when it comes to like, I think a lot of people refer to Bitcoin as digital gold, and I think that can be a useful starting place for many people. And I think that's a reason why Bitcoin will overtake gold. But it's obviously so much more than that once you dive in and you study it. Gold fails in so many ways in a global economy in a digital world, and I think some gold bugs probably recognize that, but they've been pounding the gold drum for 30 years. I mean, they've been in a good fight prior to Bitcoin, fighting for harder money, and maybe just don't have the humility to give it up and jump on the faster horse. But this to me is just a sign of that more people, and certainly probably a younger generation, are waking up to this and allocating at the very least. But yeah, obviously agree with you. It's not real Bitcoin, but hopefully it can spur some interest from the people who are getting into this, into like, what is this Bitcoin thing? And is there more to it than just owning an ETF or what have you? So we'll see.
Well, in defense of gold bugs, like gold is easier to understand than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is technology. Most people in gold aren't tech folks, so they understand gold. There's few simple steps to owning gold, and they've known this their whole lives, and it's very simple. Bitcoin requires you to learn a whole bunch of new things, and it's like it's a new world. It's a foreign language. They're not familiar with it. They don't necessarily want to learn. So there's a bit of that involved as well. But ultimately, like the math speaks for itself. Bitcoin over gold over everything else out there. It's crystal clear at this point. So whether you accept it or not, the math, will speak for itself sooner or later.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the ETFs, so I've seen this in a few places. So I'm assuming there's some validity to it. I don't know the institution behind it, or if maybe there are multiple. But financial advisors, this is probably going to be very hard to see on the video, but effectively what it says is that this financial advisor is going to automatically start weighting clients at 1% of their portfolio into IBIT, the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF, and you have to opt out. So if it's an automated determination for clients. And again, I didn't uncover who the financial advisor was because I've seen it in a few places. My assumption is it's not a small mom and pop local financial advisor. This is happening perhaps in a bigger ecosystem, but hard to say. But it's an interesting development. If any financial advisors are beginning to say, we feel so strongly that we're going to require you to opt out of this decision, that to me seems telling. What is your reaction to what this might mean for Bitcoin, for financial advisors more broadly?
Yeah, this is huge, man. I mean, if financial advisors are now sort of like autopiloting their customers into Bitcoin, that means, they categorically believe that this is a winning bet, and who doesn't want to shine, in face of their clients? So they want to make their clients money, they want to make their clients happy, and this is almost like a cheat code into achieving that very easily. You put some money into Bitcoin, Bitcoin goes up, clients very happy. Whether they understand what happened or not, that's besides the point. They just see that their portfolios at the end of the day, at the end of the month, are up. Everybody's happy. We don't know who these financial advisors are, so that's just one thing that remains, like whether this is true or not, or just some rumor that's circulating. But you know what? Whether it's a rumor at this point, I wouldn't be surprised that at some point this actually does happen, publicly, with big names, putting their reputations behind this, because again, all roads are going to lead to Bitcoin, because the fiat system is headed nowhere good. It's headed down to zero. So where else are you going to maintain your wealth and generate new wealth if it's not something that's outside a failing system? So the fact that it's happened so soon, though, yeah, that is very exciting and unexpected. Well, for if this is true, well, for all these clients, that are working with this financial advisor, well, this is your early Christmas present. Congratulations.
My curiosity with these sorts of allocations is always when Bitcoin rips and suddenly, that your IBIT shares are 5% or 10% of your portfolio. Are they going to, right size your portfolio and get it back down to 1%, or are they going to allow some higher threshold to be met with allocation to a Bitcoin ETF? Time will tell. The fact that they're doing this though makes me think there must be some level of conviction that didn't previously exist. And if that's the case, then maybe there's room for people to have 5 or 10% or more allocation to Bitcoin or Bitcoin ETFs at least. And that would be, again, we at the Bitcoin way, I know we try really hard not to get caught up in the number go up, price action, certainly in the short term. But, practically, we need the number to go up for the financial freedom we all desire. But we also need it to go up for people to get curious about Bitcoin. Like we're at all-time highs right now. We're at over 76,000. And I've gotten 0 text messages from people asking, how do I allocate? Can you explain this thing to me? It still has to be me being proactive. Maybe we're beginning to cross that chasm, and people are going to get curious. So we can only hope, but a lot of education to be done if people think buying the ETF is the end solution. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. All righty, Tony. So this next one. So this is a case that neither of us have followed intently. I'm going to sort of set this up. But Roman Sterlingov, the alleged operator of Bitcoin Mixer, Bitcoin Fog, was sentenced to 12 and a half years in prison. And I would encourage everyone to go back and listen to, we had an episode on our podcast a few weeks ago with Diverter, No KYC, and Econo Alchemist, where we talked about the Samurai case. And they brought this up. And so this was really the first time I'd learned much about it. I just heard the name. And effectively, Bitcoin fog, as I understand it, and feel free to correct me, anyone listening in the comments, it was a custodial Bitcoin mixing solution designed to provide privacy. And so probably from a, the perspective of requirements around licensed money transmission and operating those businesses, Bitcoin fog was breaking some laws. They weren't a licensed money transmitter, and they were probably operating as such as a custodial solution. But the first piece is, should those laws exist? I think a lot of us small government, no government types would, argue no. But this was, according to Divert or No KYC, one of the first big cases to use Chainalysis, which is a black box closed source solution where the defense wasn't able to really provide a robust defense against what was found on chain because they didn't know where this information was really coming from. And so there were a few open source alternatives. I think the Samurai guys had like OXT or something like that, and were contributing this to the case to be used for chain analysis for the defense. And another one was like Eclipse or something like that. And they got bought by MasterCard right before the trial. And so he was effectively left with no defense, and he still denies being the operator. He said he was a user, but the problem was he had KYC'd himself and the other potential suspects hadn't. And so they didn't have anyone else to point to. And it appears that a lot of the evidence brought to trial, the way it was not done up to the standard that evidence, must exist within the context of trial. So it seems to me like a massive distortion of justice. Probably some illegal activity, but the question as to whether or not he was even really the guy seems very much open to me. So anyway, that's a long rambling explanation, but Tony, I'm curious your response to these sorts of cases in general.
It's very hard to not have hard feelings towards this. This is disgusting what's happening. First of all, the punishment does not fit the crime, especially considering there's no real evidence against this guy. I think this is just another witch hunt, simply because it was involved in the realm of privacy and money. And the real thieves don't like it when people are actually able to save their money and protect it from being stolen from them. And so they had to use some sort of bullying tactics and find some guy to pin on the cross. And this poor guy happened to be the one. Man, my feelings about this are really, they're not, I don't like reading these stories. They make my blood boil because, as you said, all these laws should be completely obliterated. There's no room for them, or at least severely adjusted to make sense. This is complete rubbish. What happens to this guy now, I don't know. I'm hoping maybe under the Trump administration, maybe again, he'll remove this nonsense, set him free, readjust the laws, throw them out, modify them for, modern day usage. Now that he's adopting Bitcoin as, the next big thing, maybe the laws around this will change as well. Time will tell. But until then, this poor guy has to go through this nightmare, and how it ends is anybody's guess at this point.
Yeah, we can only be hopeful. And, the people who are a part of the Free Ross movement and got that in Trump's ear. And that's an easy sentence to commute for Trump. And so hopefully he follows through and still has those people talking to him. But, cautiously optimistic with any politician, but perhaps they'll be able to bring these sorts of cases like Samurai, like Bitcoin Fog, Tornado Cash, all these ongoing cases to his attention, and we can just wipe them out once and for all. It's just sad how far we've departed from the notion of privacy in our society to where something as fundamental as financial privacy is assumed to only be for criminal purposes, and not just because I just want to be left alone. I just want to have privacy, right? Like we're so far from what should be the standard that, even explaining this to people in my life, the reaction is like, well, that kind of sounds fishy. And it's like, I don't care if it sounds fishy, like people say crazy things, but they should still have freedom of speech, right? Like you think we should just shut them up? So it's, again, but people have just been like conditioned for so long that there must be something going on. It's like, no, what was going on is that someone wrote code, whether it was Roman or someone else. They wrote code. Some people used it for very legitimate purposes, and some people used it for illegitimate purposes. And the same thing happens with VPNs every day, but no one's talking about, banning VPNs, right? Or arresting the CEOs of NordVPN, or, like, it's crazy. So anyway, we'll keep our fingers crossed that we make some positive developments in a new administration for Roman. Alrighty, up next we have, so this is, again, we don't want to be overtly political here, but this is a pretty crazy thing. And so actually, the post includes a word I muted. I muted Trump because I couldn't find anything that wasn't Trump related for news. But effectively, the story that happened was a FEMA official. So FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Administration. I can't remember what the acronym is, but they do like disaster response. So in the wake of the hurricane that happened just a few months ago, a FEMA official instructed his employees to pass by and not assist homes that had a Trump sign or a Trump, banner in their yard, which is absolutely wild. So these are tax-paying citizens who deserve and have earned, by virtue of their, payment of taxes to the state, the protection of FEMA. And for 100% political purposes, it was instructed that they not be helped. Tony, is there any better indication to you that the state hates you?
Whoever this piece of shit is should be found, exposed, and thrown in jail, or at least prosecuted to some extreme level. This is for me, this is considered premeditated murder. When you're preventing help to someone just because you don't agree with them politically, and who the hell do you think you are? And by what authority, do you pass this judgment? Whoever this is unacceptable. Whether they apologize or not is besides the point. Whoever this person is knew exactly what they were doing and the intentions behind it. This person must be found, exposed, and thrown in jail no matter what. Apology or not, that can be like the cherry on top. But this person or group of people, if they're more than one, all of them should be persecuted for this. This is unacceptable. No one should be tolerating this, and no one should be holding back until this garbage is found and held accountable for what they did.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is the sad thing is, like, this isn't front page news for most people. Like, if it wasn't for X, most people are probably never going to learn about this, or it's a passing story that'll be gone tomorrow. But I think most people just aren't willing to stop long enough to consider the implications of a story like this. Like, that could be you. Like, like I live just north of a massive fault line. So like we're prone to earthquakes, and it's usually not real bad where I am. But if there's a massive earthquake, this happens all the time in California, or tornadoes in, a lot of the Midwestern United States, are you going to get passed up for your political opinion? And it's like, until it happens to you, no one cares enough. But these are the sorts of stories that really need to grab people's attention, make them think twice. Hopefully justice is served, because I don't know. I don't know what the crime is exactly. Like, but like, it's there, right? I mean, you could certainly prosecute someone for this. I just don't know the technical, illegality of it. But man, we've reached a really, really crazy place in our world, and in the United States in particular, for this to even be something that happens and slides by. And the fact that FEMA's admitting it, I think, tells you there's obviously damning evidence of it. It's, it's undeniable. And hopefully whoever this individual was and anyone else involved faces, a major consequence here very soon.
Well, if anyone was hurt because of that moronic decision, like if anybody, was severely hurt or killed, well, that's murder, right?
Yeah.
So whoever this is, no matter what, must be found, exposed, and dealt with properly. That's my opinion on this.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. All righty, last one. And so this is I didn't have a lot of time to look into the Salt Typhoon hack here, but a U.S. government agency called the CFPB, so it's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They're telling employees not to use cell phones for work-related activities because of a hack. And it looks like the group, this Chinese-backed group, is reportedly broken into companies like Verizon, AT&T, and Lumen Technologies, and has used that to surveil politicians and critical communication systems. I think for me, this is where, it's like we've accepted like these big centralized proprietary source solutions to our communication channels. And I think that's why people are waking up to things like Nostr, Bitcoin for financial self-sovereignty. But one of the things we do with the Bitcoin way that I wanted you to highlight for everyone are privacy phones. And this is like that compelling place, for taking sovereignty over your digital life as well, because if all of the CFPB employees were using privacy phones, it wouldn't even be known to these groups who the CFPB employees were to target, right? Like they would have that layer of an anonymity that would protect them. So why don't you just talk a little bit about what that is and its significance here?
The era of centralization is slowly coming to an end, and people are starting to really wake up to the risks that are associated with it. Contrary to popular belief, where centralized, regulated are all supposedly safe, and now it's becoming more and more clear that that is not the case. There couldn't be a better marketing for de-Googled privacy phones than incidences like this taking place. In the same way, there's no better marketing for why Bitcoin matters than to have your bank account stolen or frozen and taken away from you. Then once you experience that, it'll take about 10 seconds for you to understand why you should never go back there again. So privacy phones, I mean, they're the solution to these things. With privacy phones, you can go as far as adopting an anonymous phone number that works internationally, exactly the same way that your current phone works, with the exception that there's no identity of yours attached to it. So you cannot be attacked, SIM swapped, or things of that sort, because technically you don't exist on any database, right? So these solutions exist. They're all legal solutions as well. So it's like, if nobody needs to wonder whether this is legal or not, there's absolutely nothing illegal about a privacy phone. It's just, some manual steps that you have to learn in order to get it structured and set up. We can help you with all that. It's technology just like any other setup. But the difference is you are learning something new and you are opting out of the risks associated with the traditional way of doing things. So yeah, it's unfortunate that these things are happening. I expect them to continue to happen, as the world deteriorates, specifically more, as the value of things like Bitcoin continue to rise. Well, like I said in the past, the attempts to steal it are going to rise along with it. And if you're not up to date on your own, precautions and self-custody setup, and you're doing your own proper due diligence, well, you might be, a casualty or a victim of such an attack. It's completely avoidable, but it requires you to do, a certain set of steps, to take, certain responsibility for your stuff, and you'll be just fine. Same thing applies to a phone. You don't want to be SIM swapped or hacked by some, unknown company. Well, then opt out. There are options available.
Absolutely. Tony, I think that's a good place for us to wrap up. For everyone listening, thank you so much for joining today. Like Tony said, reach out to the Bitcoin Way. Go to thebitcoinway.com/podcast. We can help you with your privacy phone setup, a very liberating tool in a world of nonstop surveillance. We can help you with your online privacy, with your mobile device, with your desktop, your laptop. We can help with full, proper, 100% Bitcoin self-custody with no counterparty risk. And of course, if you need a Plan B residency option, we've got you on that too. Again, thebitcoinway.com/podcast. We'd love to schedule a free 30-minute consult with you and walk you through how we can help. Tony, I think that's all for today. Pleasure chatting, and look forward to catching up again early next week.
Likewise, Michael. Always good to be here.
Cheers, man.